Hi, in this video for Leave the Light On, I'm going to show you how to put all of your pieces together and how to sew them. Uh, the first thing that I do when I put my pieces together is that I pin the one end of the house to the floor. So I just pin straight through the bottom and straight up through the interfacing. Now when you pin, you want to pin so that the pin tips go right through the interfacing and don't stick out on the other side because you don't want to prick yourself as you're sewing. So pin an end on, and you're just going to pin straight through the bottom. Then you're going to pin a front or back on, and again you're sewing straight through the bottom, and then you're also pinning right through the sides. So what I do when I put a front or a back on is I will usually pin in these three places, and I'll pin straight up through, right at the very corner, straight through at the top of the house on this end, and then in this back corner. Then I'll go back and I will stick a couple of pins on the bottom. Now when I'm pinning the bottom, I like to avoid the windows, so I'll just put two more pins right in between the two windows. Now again, I like to bury those pin heads, the pin tips, so that you won't get pricked by them. I like using these big flower pins, but you can use glass head pins or whatever you want to. Now the next thing is you're going to put on the other end. Now notice how the front and the back don't come all the way to the end. That's so your other end of the house can sit flush with the end of the floor. So again, I'll just pin through one corner, I'll pin through the other corner, I'll pin from the end into the front or back of the house, and then I'll pin this other corner. And then I will go back in after I've pinned them all and add pins in between. And I do, again, try and avoid your windows. Now, to sew it on, what I recommend that you do is use, again, a 12 weight thread. We've already used it for the window panes. 12 weight thread. I'm using a white thread for this so you can see what I'm doing, but normally you would use a thread that coordinates with your trim. So I also use a milliner's needle, and I use a milliner's needle size 7. They have a fairly large eye, and it's a nice long needle to work with. And I usually use a thimble, but I don't have one right here, so I'm thimbleless. Start from the inside so that your knot is buried on the inside. You'll come out on one of the upper corners, and then you'll go straight across. So you want to come out on the upper corner of a front or back, and then you'll go straight across. Now I'm going to remove this pin. Actually, I'm just going to move it down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. You'll go straight across and then down. Now you do want to do a stitch about maybe every 1/4 inch. It doesn't have to be every 1/16 of an inch, so your stitches can be about every 1/4 inch. Now notice how I'm using white thread, but you can hardly see the stitches even with my using white thread. So you're coming out on the very edge of the binding on the front, and you're going in, you're going to go across the very edge of the binding on the end, and then you're going to go across and then back down to the binding, the edge of the binding on the front. So these are like little whip stitches. Pull it tight, across and down. And you're sewing edge of the binding to edge of the binding. And you're going to go all the way around. Now what I usually do is I will usually sew around the ends first. So I'll do this end, then I'll do this end. Then I'll go back and I'll sew the rest of the bottom. So to finish the roof, now you've got 2 pieces for your roof, and they will sit on the house like that. So you'll want to pin these 2 roof pieces together. And I've just taken a couple pins, and these 2, this is a little bit different in that we're not pinning straight through. We're actually pinning the 2 edges of the binding together like that. You also on the roof need a hanger. So or you can follow the pattern directions to make the hanger. And I'm just taking the hanger, folding it in half, and sliding it through the top edge of the roof. Now I'll take a ruler and make sure that that is in the center. This is about 8.5 inches long, so I should be about at 4 1/4 to be right in the center. And I'll pin that on also. And I pin it on both sides. Like that. And so I'll do my whip stitching across the top. And then to attach it to the house, you're only going to attach it on 2 sides, this side and this side of the ends, because you'll want to be able to lift the front in order to put your tea lights or some hanging lights on the inside. So whip stitch from here to here on one side, and then from here to here on the other side. Add a magnetic button, and we like the Bowen magnetic buttons. They're like buttons, you sew them in. And then you'll add your tea lights. You can either add regular tea lights, and these tea lights are very, very bright, and they're blue in color, so if you're making a beach house, these are nice for the beach house. Or you can have a much softer light. This is a soft white light that you might want to use in your Christmas house, if you do a Christmas house. Or you can just add a string of lights and hang them from the inside of your hanger with a safety pin. And that's it. Enjoy!